Hello, welcome back to Leaders in Conversation with me, Anni Townend. Today's guest is Ed Corbett, Head of Consulting, AI evangelist, lover of marketing, mentor to emerging businesses, and known as the Brand Plan Man. The title of our conversation is Igniting the Pursuit of Better. Leaders in Conversation is the podcast in which leaders share their life and leadership stories, the people, places, and experiences that have shaped their values, beliefs, passion, and purpose, all to encourage, inspire, and ignite you to be even more confident and courageous in your leadership. If you're not already, please do subscribe to the podcast, review, and share it. I had the joy of meeting Ed over 10 years ago when he was working at a pharmaceutical company here in the UK. Ed had been to an event and heard my colleague and mentor, Steve Radcliffe, speaking about future, engage, deliver, and being at your best more of the time. Ed invited Steve to the pharmaceutical company to do a session on being at your best, following which the company asked for a proposal. This led to an amazing Future Engage Deliver leadership development program that was a huge success over many, many years and transformed people's lives and leadership. In our conversation today, Ed offers valuable insights into how success is built on big relationships, the importance of seeking out and really listening to feedback to help us grow and develop, why being comfortable, not knowing everything, is key to leadership. And finally, how we can inspire others to be the best they can be. Ed, welcome. It's so wonderful to reflect on our having known each other for so many years. And I do remember meeting in what was known as the Discovery Centre all those years ago and sitting in some rather wonderful, coloured, vibrant seats, which communicated this, you matter, our people matter. And as I mentioned in the introduction, you were inspired and ignited by Steve Radcliffe and his work on Future Engage Deliver and his book Leadership Plain and Simple, which led to a program that lasted over many, many years. During that time, you also developed and grew your leadership. And I would love to start by inviting you to talk about Brand You, Ed, and who are the people, places, and experiences that have shaped you, your values, your beliefs, your passion and purpose.
Well, I think there's quite a long list of people who've helped me grow in my leadership. And I've been very lucky to work with really great people over the years in lots of different companies. There are a couple of people who do stand out. And what they have in common is they cared about me and how I was doing. And that's not just how I was doing in the moment, how's your day going? It's how am I doing in my career? Where do I want to go? What do I want to achieve? They would demonstrate it in very different ways. Some were incredibly direct, which took a little bit of getting used to. I mean, tough love, I suppose you could call it. Some were much more soft and encouraging and holding my hand. But what they all did, as well as looking out for me, is they would give me feedback. So they would be very honest about what I was doing and maybe where they could see that I could improve. But they always left it up to me to make that next step. And it's something I've always valued because as I've grown in my career, I've realized there's some feedback you listen to, and honestly, there's sometimes you don't actually act.
It's a lovely example of demonstrating care, Ed, I think, giving feedback, that we care enough about somebody to give them feedback. That can be encouraging feedback, developing feedback. And I think it also demonstrates a commitment to their success. And when you say there's some feedback that you're more ready to listen to from some people, for me, when I know that somebody is really committed to my success and I know they care about me, then I want their feedback. I want to hear what they have to say. And certainly in my work with my colleague Lucy Kidd, we talk about the importance of bringing curiosity, care, and courage, and those three things working together. And that when as leaders, we give feedback from a place of curiosity and we listen to that feedback from a place of curiosity, when we give it with care and we know we're being taken care of. And when somebody has the courage to share some feedback that may not be initially easy for us to hear, either because it's very positive and we might shy away from positive feedback, or because it's feedback that is encouraging us to perhaps do something differently.
I've been in the world of work for over 2 decades now, and the world of work has really changed. It's been more accepting and open. So when I first joined, the idea that you would be very open to someone caring about you, even that very language, honestly, was pretty alien. And it's been really nice. And it's the societal changes. People are just more open to be themselves and to be comfortable in being themselves and bring their whole selves to work. It's so much better than some of the early experiences I've seen with colleagues when I first started, where you could just see they were just wearing a mask and not being their true selves. But now I think it's really common parlance and common currency in most businesses to say, just turn up who you are. We will find the right place for you and the skills that you have.
It's really interesting that you say even the word care and caring was less spoken about, was not the way in which people spoke about leadership. And again, when I think about all of the work that I do and that we did together, for me, it is about creating cultures of care and connection, and that people do their best work. They are ignited to pursue better when not only do we feel able to be who we are, which I think is also easier said than done. I think leadership starts with growing self-awareness. And again, feedback comes into that, and thinking particularly about the impact that we have on other people. So it's not only about being myself, it's also being considerate. And I remember you and I did a lot of work in terms of managing our impact, thinking about our intended impact and impact landed, and how we need to get feedback, how people feel around us and how valuable that is, those perceptions, not the truth, but in terms of that is the perception of somebody, that's their felt experience of who we are. So that dynamic between being myself, but also being considerate of how other people experience me.
I think one of the things that Future Engage Deliver really demonstrates is the democratization of leadership, where everybody is a leader and being up to something. What do you care about? All these concepts in the Future Engage Deliver model just democratize the leadership, and you just see it playing out where people just do better work once they kind of understand actually what it's all about.
What do you care about, your values and beliefs, and how were they shaped by your upbringing, which led to your passion and purpose? Where did all of that start?
When I grew up, my dad was very much work smart, be smart, get stuff done, and you will rise to the top. So I went into the world of work with very much that as the mindset. Just work really hard, be smart, and the rest will follow. And then over time, what I realized was that's not the only thing that actually makes you successful and makes you successful through others. And I had a lot of conversations about this, kind of unlearning a lot of the things that I'd been brought up with. And that experience through our work, what is it that you really care about, takes time. And I would encourage anyone listening to this podcast or anyone interested in what do you care about. And the things I care about are the idea of challenging the status quo and to say, how can we do it better? There's this thing over there. What's happening over there? Is there a way we can actually do it better? It's that idea of continual improvement that really drives me when I'm working with people, is for them to be able to turn up and be themselves and be relaxed. And honestly, just to have fun and have a laugh. Where I work now, fun is a core value, and it shows in everything we do. And it just makes the whole experience of work much lighter. So caring about people, challenging the status quo, having fun, and realizing that the individual success only happens when you're part of a team. So it's not all about me. And this is, again, encouragement to those listening. It's not always about you. It's who you work with and how you work with them will actually gain that greater success.
I love that. And one of your insights into your leadership is that success is built on building big relationships, which again is a huge part of Future Engage Deliver. And for listeners new to Future Engage Deliver, Steve describes this as leadership starts in the future, as you've described it, Ed, in touch with what you really care about and being guided by what you care about in your purpose and your passion. being up to something and then being up to something together with others, and that leadership happens inside of big relationships. And the bigger the relationships that we have, the more we get done together, the more possibilities, the more opportunity for people to grow and develop and deliver. And the results are a reflection of those big relationships. What is a big relationship for you, Ed?
I'm going to steal from Steve because he says it so well. It's big enough to get the job done. And I think when people are initially introduced to the idea of big relationships, it honestly can feel a little bit uncomfortable because traditionally where people talk about relationships, they can read into it like this really deep, almost sometimes romantic connection. Sometimes people think, actually, that's not appropriate for the world of work. That's really not what we're talking about here. It's, do you know the person? Do you know what's going on? Do they know you? What motivates them? What makes them tick? What are they up to? And that takes time, and it just takes effort, right? If you don't do that, and I'm sure we've all experienced it, it can just be incredibly transactional, where you come in to the office or on a Teams call or whatever, and someone just demands, have you done this? And there's no reason why you should do it. You don't feel invested in that person's success. Sometimes you might not feel honestly invested in your own success, and it just sort of hollows you out. But if you get to know the person, to understand, not in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable or you're prying, but just to get to know them, then when things are successful, you celebrate success. But when tough times happen, whether it's a tough time at work or a tough time in personal circumstances, you have that strength of relationship so you can lean on each other. And that's what happens in life, right? I think having the idea that there's this work and there's life, we're just this of both. And it can be brilliant, but also it can be super, super tough at times. And if you don't understand who you're working with and where they're coming from and what they want to achieve and kind of what's going on, I don't think you can really achieve greatness together.
I can imagine that some listeners will be thinking we don't always have time to build big relationships. And I would like to challenge the thinking that it does take a long time and pick up on something which you and I've talked about previously, that through asking the right questions and it being a conversation, we can get to know each other better, faster, and actually fast track building big relationships. What are the questions that you ask, Ed, that help you to build big relationships fast?
The way I personally do it is take an interest in the individual. Just ask them how their day's going, what happened at the weekend. But the key thing is to pay an interest in what's happening in that person's life and listen. You've got to really listen and pay attention. That then opens up. You start to build trust as you do this. It's also sharing something about yourself. Again, this is about what you feel most comfortable with, but you need to share things about yourself as well. Otherwise, it can obviously feel like an interrogation. But then you start to consolidate that over time. You build almost a shared narrative that you both understand kind of what's going on. And just over time, you will feel, literally, it's a feeling of the relationship getting bigger. You feel you can trust someone more. You can be more honest. And it enables you to make those big requests. So I really need your help with X, Y, and Z. And they should feel comfortable to do it with you as well.
There's a reciprocality, isn't there, in a big relationship? I've certainly noticed that when I'm more open and sharing more of myself with someone, with a team, that is encouraging of others to choose to be open. And I think choice does come into this. And an important part of that for me is feeling safe enough to be open. And of course, it's a circular, the one feed the other, that the more open I am, and when I'm listened to with curiosity, then the more safe I feel. And then the more open I am, and the more open you can be with me. And so there is that being aware of creating that safety in which openness and trust can follow. One of the things that I encourage people to do is to think about their relationships. Where are the relationships, and are they big enough to get that job done, to get the job delivered through and with others? And if not, where might I need to build a relationship? Where might I need to plan a relationship? I think that's a really exciting place to be when I'm building a new relationship. how can we plan the relationship? And I think it speaks to the title of our conversation, Igniting the Pursuit of Better. How can I help you ignite the pursuit of better? How can I be part of your ignition in that pursuit of better? And asking those questions early on when we are planning a relationship, we're working on something together, could include, for example, what does success look like to you? What is it that you're leading for? And I know our first contact came through Steve talking about being at your best more of the time. And I think that's another great question. How can I help you to be at your best? What are the kind of things that trigger you from being at your best that it would be useful for me to know about? So I think there's a lot in building relationships big enough to get the job done, the building, the planning, and sometimes having to repair a relationship and to perhaps look back in order to look forward and to think about what was it that happened, what was the impact, and how can we leave that behind and move forward.
There's a real nice example of showing that vulnerability, which I'd like to share. I was at a previous big pharma company and there was a town hall with the CEO and they started talking. The first thing they said was, I've literally just got off a plane from Japan. I'm super tired, so I apologize if I trip up on words. And this individual is talking to 600-700 people. It's a big audience. And then, of course, went on to deliver the best speech. By saying that, demonstrating vulnerability, that you almost hear an audible, and then you just buy that allowance that actually you're not infallible. Even though that person's the CEO and people naturally look to that person, you're not infallible and actually you're all invested in this person's success. And I think sometimes leaders, people who see it very hierarchically, think you've got to be this poker-faced, iron-willed, completely bulletproof individual. That's just not reality. And actually, if you do demonstrate that vulnerability, then actually encourages others to demonstrate, and you just build huge amounts of trust within a team. And I think the other thing I would just pick up on is I would never give up on a relationship. Some relationships just come more easily, right? You get on with people, that's life. You just tend to get on with people, but never give up on a relationship. And if you feel that a relationship is challenging, one of the most powerful things you can do, but it takes courage, is to call it out, to say, look, I just don't feel we have this relationship. I really want to work with you on this. And then you're creating this space where that individual can then start to lean into the conversation. It can be uncomfortable, but it can be very, very powerful.
That's a lovely invitation, isn't it? To say, I would like us to have a bigger relationship and how can we help each other grow our relationship? I think that's fantastic. And I know in the world of where we move roles and jobs more often, I'm always encouraging people to remember that the relationships are what can hold us together. We might not be still working on something together, but nevertheless, we still have the relationships. And how can we cultivate them? You also, speaking about the chief executive who shared that they were jet lagged. I think that demonstrates human leadership, that robust vulnerability. But also they did something which I'm very encouraging of leaders to do and encourage listeners to do, which is signposting. So almost through signposting, I am jet lag, I'm tired, I'm not, on top form. That helps people to understand that the impact felt may be different from the one they perhaps would have intended. But by letting people know, then people can feel empathy towards us and care. But it can be uncomfortable. And that leadership is about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Can you say a bit more about leadership being uncomfortable?
I think it's something you have to initially acknowledge that you're going to go through this level of being uncomfortable. Because once you accept it, then actually it just makes the next steps much easier. I think the first time you have these uncomfortable conversations, that's as bad as it's ever going to get, right? Because it's the first time you've done it and you're just going to have to push through it.
And interestingly, Ed, what I would say to that very quickly is that often the conversation that we imagine is going to be uncomfortable, you and I know that we then come away from it. Well, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I wish I'd had it sooner.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we are terrible as a species of just playing all these scenarios and this could happen and that could happen. And you're suddenly awake at 3 a.m. worrying about it. And then, as you rightly say, you do it and it wasn't half as bad or actually a lot better than you thought. I remember the first difficult conversation I had with a boss of mine. And years later, we are still in touch. And I effectively had to say to them, you need to stop micromanaging me. Like, I've got this. Don't need to check on me every 5 minutes. I said, look, I've done a good job in the last 6 months, right? You need to give me the space. And to their credit, they said, okay, all right. And then that was a difficult conversation to have, but it needed to be had. It was almost like popping a bubble. And then suddenly the relationship was stronger. We trusted each other more. I felt I could go to that individual and be more honest moving forward.
Lovely. And a great example, Ed, of inspiring others to be the best they can be through encouraging them, as you did with that person, to give you space in order that you could be the best you can be. How else do you personally in your leadership, both at home and at work, inspire others to be the best that they can be? I know you've mentioned your father, but I also know that you are a father. And I think of values and beliefs, passion and purpose being very much about the whole person.
I use Leadership Plain and Simple routinely. So everybody in my team has a copy. It's pretty much the only book that I say to the team, I really would love you to read this. It's pithy, but it has the right language. And then I use the language, the light you shine, the shadow you cast as an example. So that gives me the framework to actually have those conversations. I always encourage the team to think about what they're doing and to challenge it. Let's say we run a meeting or a workshop or whatever, having an after action review. So what did we do? What do we expect to happen? Did it happen? If it didn't, why not? And then that virtuous learning circle. And part of that is, yes, it's about the work, the specific circumstance, the report or whatever, but it's also about us as individuals. So I will say to the team, what did you learn? What did you want to achieve with this piece of work? And did you? And if you didn't, okay, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but are we going to learn for the next time? I also encourage the team to, when we start work on a project, say to each other, what do we want to get out of this individually for our own growth? And it could be, it's very practical, I want to write the report, or it could be, I want to lead the conversation, or whatever it may be. So we start and then we pull that through, and then through those conversations, through the duration of the project, then actually you just get people starting on that feedback. So the feedback is a huge part of that improvement process. Let's always be looking about how we can improve things so that the team, again, building that safety to say, oh, actually, maybe we could do it better. So recently we had an example of an internal process which had been around for a few years. And a team member called it out and said, hey, I think that needs updating because of X, Y, and Z. It's not on my radar. But the fact the team member called out, had the comfort to call that out, fantastic. That's exactly what I expect from the team, and hopefully foster the environment where people feel comfortable to do that.
It's great that you give the book Leadership Plain and Simple to everybody in your team, and that you highlight it gives people a common language with which to have leadership conversations. Ed, as we come to the end of our conversation, tell me, what are your 3 key encouragement to leaders, listeners, that will help them have conversations and build bigger relationships?
I think the first one is to acknowledge and accept that you're not, and actually you can never be perfect, right? I think there's a lot of chatter in the media to say you can be this and you can be that. And actually, no one's perfect. And you shouldn't strive for perfection because you're never going to get there. It's more about understanding where you are and how you can actually make that improvement to work in whatever way or shape or form. The second point really is around growth, and you understanding that you really only grow with and through the help of others. You are part of a team, and your perception of how you come across, the impact you intend, is not often the impact felt. And you need to create that network of people who feel comfortable to give you feedback. And that can be difficult at times, but it's really what you need to grow. And I think the last point, and it's something I say to my kids every day, is be yourself. Relax into who you are. So the more you can be comfortable about who you are and what you care about, you will come across as being more relaxed, and it actually inspires others to be the same. You know what? You're good just the way you are. Just be you.
Thank you, Ed. Lovely, lovely encouragements, and ending on to be who you are. Wonderful. Thank you. And I have one final question for you. It's my pop-up question, which is, as a result of our conversation today, who and what is the conversation that you're going to have?
So I have a new team member who's joined, and we've known each other for a few years, but we've only really started working together in the last few weeks. They have a copy of the book, and whilst I say we work together, we haven't had the opportunity in the past to necessarily build that big relationship. So when I speak to them tomorrow, talking about Leadership Plain and Simple, the book, this podcast, Igniting the Pursuit of Better, will definitely be on the agenda for discussion.
Thank you, Ed. And thank you for igniting the pursuit of better, both in our conversation today, but also I think that's what you ignited all those years ago at the pharmaceutical company where you were then working. You ignited the pursuit of better across the organization, and the program truly transformed people's leadership and their lives. So for listeners who are interested in the book, Leadership Plain and Simple, please go to Amazon if you would like to find out more about Future, Engage, Deliver, and also talk to me, get in touch with me, Anni Townend. Ed, for people who would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
I love having conversations about leadership, but also marketing and pharma. Best way to get in touch is via LinkedIn. I was working with a client, and at the break in one of the workshops, the client came up to me and said, "You really love brand planning, don't you? You're the brand plan man." And I'm like, right, that's going to stick. So I was bold and I put it on my LinkedIn profile.
I love that. Thank you so much for being in conversation with me today. And I do encourage listeners to get in touch with you via LinkedIn for a conversation, for further conversations. To listen to other leaders in conversation with me, Anni Townend, do go to my website, annitownend.com. A big thank you not only to you, Ed, but also to Schmogus Media, Coco, for the wonderful production and marketing of the podcast. Please do contact me, visit my website, subscribe to my newsletter, and of course, subscribe to the podcast. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Ed, for being you.
Thank you.